Well, I made a whoopsie. I forgot to make my pick'ems for the East yesterday and the West. Usually I do them both, but these were how these three matches went. As far as Seoul versus Philly, I would have probably gotten that wrong. I would have predicted Spark against Hunters, and I probably would have put 3-1. Maybe I would have put 3-2. But I would have definitely favored Spark because I think Spark look amazing right now. So I would have gotten that prediction correct. Whether or not the scoreline would be correct is unknown because I didn't do it. And also, well, I haven't really watched the Hunter games. So. And Guangzhou Shanghai, I would have predicted Shanghai, but I would not have put down 3-2. So that's just that. So let's go on with the rest of the predictions. Philly just lost to Seoul. I'm predicting they beat Chengdu, and I'm going to predict a sweep purely because I think Philly is going to be angry that they lost. I think Guangzhou will lose to Seoul, but I think that'll probably be a 3-1 affair. Seoul with a lot of momentum against the Dynasty, or Seoul with a lot of momentum because they beat the Fusion, and Guangzhou, off of almost beating the Dragons, should be quite a fun match to see. And the Shanghai Dragons will probably just beat the Valiant. I'll give the Valiant a map because they've been showing promise, but I don't think the Valiant will win against the Shanghai Dragons. Guangzhou versus Hangzhou. This is notoriously a match that goes the distance, but I think Hangzhou put it away in 4 unless they do spark things and mess things up. Shanghai should be able to beat Chengdu. I will give Chengdu 2 maps because Shanghai look like they're struggling right now sometimes. And Chengdu can just do Chengdu things. Chengdu could win, to be entirely honest with you. And the Philly Fusion should beat the Valiant, and I'm just going to mark that as a 3-0. I think the Philly are going to take this loss to Seoul personally and just start wrecking their opponents. Shanghai versus Seoul could be interesting, and then Hunters versus the Valiant and Spark versus Fusion. I could see any of these matches going either way. Chengdu don't really look great right now. And obviously Valiant haven't won yet, and this will be the Valiant's last match of the first quarter of the season. So they would like to at least get a win. Seoul just coming off of a demolishing of Philly, and probably, who did it play last? Guangzhou. Probably beat Guangzhou. So they'll probably be feeling really good. Who knows what's going to happen there. And Spark have been looking really good. I think I'm going to predict Shanghai to win 3-1. I think I'm going to predict Chengdu win 3-2. And it's not because I don't trust the Valiant. I just don't. I don't trust Chengdu or the Valiant. The Valiant, I haven't watched Chengdu's games. That's my issue. I haven't watched Chengdu's games. But I'm going to just rely on the fact that maybe Chengdu actually know what they're doing, and maybe they'll beat the Valiant. And the Valiant will go 0-6 for the start of the year. Although the Valiant could definitely beat Chengdu. Easily possible. And as for Hangzhou and Philly, I mean, Philly's probably going to beat Spark, but I'll also put it in 5. I think the Spark are doing great. The Spark could even win this matchup if they play really well. Now, on to the Western region. Gladiators versus London. The Gladiators should just destroy London. There's no reason for the Gladiators to not beat London. Yes, the Gladiators have lost 2 matches, but the Gladiators lost those 2 matches in reverse sweep fashion to actual good teams. They've beaten the bad teams where it matters. I think Toronto will probably beat New York. We'll do a 3-1. Could be kind of cool. And San Francisco versus Vancouver, if that is anything but a 3-0 for the San Francisco Shock, I will be incredibly impressed with the Vancouver Titans. Shock would basically have to throw to give away a map in that series, because San Francisco are probably one of the best, if not the best team in North America right now. And there's almost no debate on that. They haven't lost yet. They reverse swept Gladiators. I think they reverse swept the Dallas Fuel as well. I'm not quite sure. Atlanta Reign versus London. I'm gonna pick Atlanta. I think London will take a map. Houston versus Paris. I think Paris will probably lose that matchup, but I'm gonna give it to the Houston in 5. Paris have been performing a lot better recently than before. Justice versus Florida. Washington Justice. We'll come back to them because I just don't trust the Justice for my life. Then the final 2 matches are Fuel versus Boston. The Fuel should just take that win and run with it. And Gladiators versus Atlanta. I think the Gladiators will probably win that matchup, and I'll give Atlanta a map. Atlanta could take it to 5, though, against the Gladiators. It's just really a matter of, can the Gladiators finish off their opponents? That's really it. And so the final one that we have to talk about is the Washington Justice versus the Florida Mayhem. The Florida Mayhem are probably worse on paper than the Washington Justice, but then again, I think the vast majority of my incorrect predictions in NA come from strictly Washington games. There was the Fuel match, but then Washington was wrong. This one was right. The Washington game was wrong. This was wrong. That's East. That was right. And the Washington was wrong. So like 3 out of my 5 games predicting Washington so far are just wrong. That's not good. Every time I think they're going to lose, they destroy their opponents. And every time I think they're going to win, they just let me down. Washington Justice are probably the closest thing that we've got to Seoul Dynasty of NA. When they show up, they can beat anybody. They can just destroy people. But then some days they can just drop games to bad teams. So we'll go with a 3. I'll bet that Justice win this game. I'm going to give it to them in 4, and we'll see how bad this is. We'll see when Washington lose and stuff like that. But that's going to be my predictions for this week. I forgot to make these predictions, so that's not very good. But, I mean, I would have gotten these 2 correct. Probably would have gotten the score correct. Well, these 2. I would have gotten Hangzhou Chengdu and Guangzhou Shanghai correct. I probably would have gotten the score for Hangzhou Chengdu correct, but I would have gotten Dynasty Fusion incorrect. And the score line for the Shanghai Guangzhou match, incorrect. I would have probably predicted a 3-0 or 3-1 for the Fusion. I would have most likely predicted a 3-1 for the Spark. And I would have predicted a 3-1 or 3-0 for the Shanghai Dragons. With that being said, yeah, see you later.